achieved.
So right out of the gate, I need to acknowledge my last show was absolutely fucking brutal. I can't remember the last time I had such a bad performance. Going 3-11 now, I kind of anticipated with the unknown circumstances of these events that there was the potential for fights just not to play out anywhere near what I expected them to. But the frustrating aspect of the last show, the Harris versus Overeem show, was just, first and foremost, the decisions. If you look up and down how things played out, Darren Elkins, it wasn't a robbery. I thought the 30-27s for Landwehr were not appropriate. I honestly gave rounds 1 and 3 to Elkins, just outworking him, and Landwehr just, acting like kind of an idiot in there. So I thought Elkins could have got a bit of a better shake in that. Even a split decision loss would have been more representative of how that fight played out. And then I felt Marlon Varick probably got the nod over Song Yadong in that featherweight scrap, winning rounds 1 and 3. Edson Barboza easily should have locked down that Dan Ige victory. I'm not sure what the judges were watching. On the flip side, I felt Angela Hill got robbed. I had Claudia Gadelha in that matchup, but I felt Angela Hill easily won that fight, rounds 2 and 3 as far as I'm concerned, if I remember correctly. So very upsetting. And then furthermore, if you look at the card, I look at some of the things, the way they played out, and it's just like, I initially picked Rodrigo Nascimento, and then I changed my mind and updated my pick accordingly. I also had, you look at Matt Brown, who had Baeza in trouble early in that fight and couldn't finish. I went back and forth in the Jocko Anders fight, and again, I settled on Anders, which was a mistake. And I had Harris to finish Overeem, who had been all sorts of trouble early. Hats off to Alistair Overeem. But the point I guess I want to make is not how bad I was at predicting or how things could have gone much better than they did, was that the judging situation. Clearly we've had some very questionable decisions, and a lot of people are suggesting that the judges are being influenced by possibly hearing the play-by-play announcers and hearing what they're suggesting, what they're saying, and I don't know what it was. I don't know how you give, I know Ige put up a good fight, but I felt Edson Barboza fairly clearly took 2 of those rounds, if not all 3 of them at times. Ige, I shouldn't say all 3. Ige had moments and probably could have been awarded a round in that fight. But either way, I just feel like the judging something needs to be done. Whether it's isolating and removing the judges from not the judges, but the play-by-play guys from where the judges can hear them, doing something to inhibit their ability to influence them by just talking about one fighter over the next, or talking about how significant a punch was or a moment was. But honestly, I don't know if maybe it's just the judging. Maybe the judging that night was just off and the judges had a tough night. But either way, it just was frustrating to watch those fights play out the way they did and see some of those matchups go down and go, okay, I've clearly felt that this individual won, and they don't even get a nod from one of the judges, let alone 2. Either way, hey, we get to start all over again with another fun night of fights. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we are breaking in the upcoming UFC on ESPN 9, which will take place on May 30th from the UFC Apex Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'll have your 5 main card predictions on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, so you certainly can check them out there. I'll also be posting bet packs. Honestly, my winning streaks got snapped at the last show. They were that bad. So that's something that certainly is concerning. I'm also in a bit of a slump in main event predicting. I think I've lost 3 consecutive main events, which has been incredibly disappointing, but hey, it is what it is. It's a tough business to predict fights. It's already, there's so much uncertainty and just a lot to figure out. Under normal conditions, we've added in even more volatile scenarios. So not to make excuses, but it is what it is. So let's buckle down and see if we can hammer out some fights. I've looked at a couple fights differently, viewed a few different points of interest when trying to break these matchups down in an attempt to get back on the horse. On that note, we've got some fun fights to break down, so let's get to that first main card prediction. The first fight of the main card goes down in the UFC Women's Strawweight Division as the 10-4 Hannah Shockwave Cifers takes on the 7-1 Mackenzie Dern, the vaunted jiu-jitsu practitioner. Dern is coming off her first career loss to Amanda Ribas. She also returned from a pregnancy going into that matchup. Of course, she lost a very wide decision to Ribas in that matchup. She's 2-1 in the UFC overall. For Cifers, she lost her debut against Macy Barber. She put up a good fight, but ultimately couldn't get it done. She then won back-to-back fights before a TKO loss to Angela Hill. She is now 2-2 inside the octagon. Physically, Dern is 3 inches taller, so a 1-inch reach advantage, and Mackenzie is the younger fighter by a year. Now, it's worth noting that Dern has had some issues making weight, And I believe she did make weight for her last fight. But ultimately, you look at this and you go, under these conditions, is that going to impact her? Is that going to be a concern for her right off the hop before we even get into the cage? Is she going to be able to make it to the cage? Is she going to deplete herself so badly, or is she not even going to make it and the fight won't happen because she misses weight so badly? So that's certainly something to pay attention to. Now, this is outside of that, this is a massive fight for Mackenzie. If she loses this bout, she'll be 2-2 in the UFC. She'll have lost back-to-back fights. She'll be quite a while removed from her last UFC victory, and her future certainly is in doubt. The hype surrounding her would be all but gone, and there'll be a lot of questions moving forward. And for Cifers, she seems like a perennial underdog, so this is not something new for her. As I said, she had a decent showing against Barber. She upset Polyana Viana, a fight I correctly predicted, which is, hey, coming off the last show, I'll take anything I can get. She's a jiu-jitsu purple belt. She's been submitted once in her career. She has 0 submission wins, so it kind of tells you where I'm going with this. She can't afford to mess around with Dern on the mat. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She's had some issues when taken down. She's actually been taken down in 3 of her 4 UFC fights, including 3 times by Jodie Esquibel, who is not exactly known for her grappling prowess. So that is concerning. Where Cifers wants this fight to transpire is on the feet. She's got some solid Muay Thai skills. She hurt Viana, which really turned the fight in her favor in that matchup. Not a huge volume striker. She actually got outworked by the Brazilian in that fight. Is her striking enough to beat Mackenzie Dern? Dern's striking leaves a lot to be desired. She does have some pop, as we saw her drop ABC Amanda Cooper prior to submitting her. But Dern has way too much motion. She got a lot of wasted energy. She's kind of bouncing around. She's got just too many movements in her offense. She was kind of getting battered by Hibas in that fight and was clearly tired from both the fight itself and the damage she was taking. So if Cifers can keep it on the feet, she has the ability to do some damage and to create some problems for Mackenzie. But it's worth noting that Hibas has had her success because she's so good in the mat, a jiu-jitsu black belt in her own right. She could push forward, she could engage Mackenzie on the feet because she wasn't nearly as concerned about being taken down and going to the ground. That won't be the case here with Cifers. I feel like Mackenzie's wrestling, while it's far from a sure thing, she should be able to bully a much smaller opponent to the ground, clinch her up, drag her into that position. Cifers is a bit undersized, which is certainly concerning. This is a make-or-break fight for Mackenzie Dern. Her first loss in professional mixed martial arts should humble her a little bit and get her back on track. I think she should be able to take advantage of the smaller striking-based opponent. Almost feels like Cifers is being handpicked for Dern to get things going again here. But my prediction is Mackenzie Dern to defeat Hannah Cifers by submission. Moving right along, we're in the UFC's lightweight division as Roosevelt Roberts takes on the promotional sophomore Brok Weaver. Roberts coming in with a current record of 9-1. Weaver slightly more experienced at 15 wins and 4 losses. As far as the betting odds are concerned, Roberts a fairly heavy favorite at minus 334 compared to the plus 250 you're getting on a Weaver potential victory. Now, Roberts beat Alexander Yakovlev in his last fight, which was coming off the first loss of his career to Vince Pichel. Another fight I correctly predicted, another nice little upset. Roberts is 3-1 so far in the UFC. He started his pro career in 2016, so it's a relatively recent pro and has been fairly active and is continuing that trend inside the octagon. For Weaver, he has won 8 in a row since his last loss in 2016. He started his pro career 5-3. Now, he won his UFC debut over Rodrigo Vargas via DQ and not a strong performance. He was getting beat in the first round, and then an illegal knee landed that gave him the victory. So it's a victory, but it's not exactly a strong performance to make your UFC debut, and he's definitely going to come into this matchup looking to turn things around and put some get some shine back on his profile. Physically, Roberts 2 inches taller, same reach. These guys are fairly tall for the division. Roberts is the younger fighter by 3 years. Weaver has a massive advantage, not a massive edge, a 2-1 edge in overall experience. But Roberts has 50 minutes of UFC cage time compared to 4 for Weaver. So that tells you a lot there. That kind of balances it, if not swings things in Roosevelt's favor. Now, when you look at Weaver on his first in his contenders bout, he gave up an early takedown in that fight. He did stay calm for the most part, but he struggled to create a lot of separation. And when you look at the way Weaver fights, he does his best work when he can maintain separation, land combinations. He throws volume. We didn't get to see it in his UFC debut, obviously, because he spent most of the fight on his back and being pressured. He has almost a Diaz-style striking power where it's not going to be super powerful, but he's just going to keep popping you and slapping those big, those fists out there and buzzing you and being annoying and piling up the damage and really, turning it into a fight that maybe you can't hold up in and that he can. Now, in his contenders bout, it was close. It was one of those back-and-forth dogfights where both guys had their moments. He benefited from his opponent slowing down. They did a lot of clinch fighting that matchup. Weaver was landing some short-range offense, some elbows and punches, which will be key as this fight could transpire in a similar position. When you go to his matchup in the UFC against Vargas, he was taken down very early in the fight, very similar to the contenders bout. And he really struggled in that fight. He went for some submissions, guillotine versus Vargas. It was tight, but he couldn't finish. He was throwing strikes off his back. He was looking to be offensive instead of opting to get up and then be offensive. He was looking to be offensive from a very vulnerable or detrimental position. And he attempted some submissions and didn't really work out. And it's kind of like, is he a submission over position guy, which is certainly concerning. As I said, the illegal knee did save him from that potential 0-1 starter, at least having to rally back from it from a lost first round. No shame in it because it was a pretty nasty knee, but it's not a great look for your first UFC outing. Now, Roberts, he's known for being a very capable submission fighter, at least very creative. He's actually more dangerous in the clinch at times than he is on the mat, simply because he's so tall and he's got such long limbs. We've seen him lock up some submissions. He'll attack next from that position and look for a sub. If he can't get a sub, he'll use that head control to try and snap you down and transition to a better position on the mat, possibly setting up a submission in that spot. At range, he's got some decent kicking. He'll throw some jabs. Not an amazing distance striker. He did spend some time on his back against Pichel in his loss to Vince there, who was a power puncher, was able to bully him around and took the wrestling to him. And I think we didn't really see where his striking was at in that fight, but his hands look much better against Yakovlev. He was throwing some decent combinations, attacking the body as well, and just it looked a little more direction, purpose on his offense. And it's worth noting, Yakovlev's a very tall lightweight, having fought at welterweight. So that's good experience for Roberts to fight guys who are as tall as him, have the same or similar reach, because you're not always going to have that advantage. And that's something you're not sure if Brock Weaver, who's also relatively tall, not quite as tall as Roberts, has the same reach. Does he have that experience fighting guys that can match that, and where you're dealing with not having that traditional advantage you normally have? I like the way Robert stays calm under pressure, doesn't get flustered. He did a nice job countering Yakovlev's grappling attempts into solid positions, scrambling into top spots. He's a very good scrambler at times, which is a good tool to have against a submission fighter like Weaver, a guy who's submission over position, I should say. The guy who's going to chase submissions, and you can counter and kind of trick him or trap him into going for things that aren't going to work out and are going to ultimately result in you on top or in a superior spot. That's going to work out in your favor over the duration of a fight. Weaver may struggle again with the length advantage that he normally enjoys, that he will actually favor Roberts here. I think Roberts will have the clinch game and the takedown attack in his back pocket. He'll be able to grapple when he feels that striking isn't going his way, put a lot of pressure, grind into Weaver along the cage. And if he got the better of Yakovlev in a lot of those positions, I think he should find success here as well. Weaver seems too vulnerable to takedowns and clinch fighting to really be able to win this fight unless Roberts absolutely gasses out or falls apart under if he can't close that distance routinely. I don't think Roberts will slow, which is something that Weaver has counted on in previous fights. And my prediction is Roosevelt Roberts to defeat Brock Weaver by decision. Now, this next matchup just literally came across my desk, or whatever you want to call this thing I'm sitting at. I guess it's a desk. What we are looking at here is a UFC welterweight matchup as Gabriel Green, making his UFC debut with a record of 9 wins and 2 losses, takes on D-Rod Daniel Rodriguez, currently honing a fairly solid record of 11 wins and a single defeat. Now, the tables are turned a little bit on Rodriguez here. He made his debut against Tim Means on short notice. Now, Green is coming in on less than a week's notice after Kevin Holland was forced to pull. It was really unfortunate. Holland was looking to fight the second time in 2 weeks, cutting down to welterweight. Very interesting fight for him. Now he's out with an undisclosed injury. Now, Rodriguez debuted and finished Tim Means in round 2. Very impressive. Has won 7 in a row since his first career loss. For Green, he's stepping up to welterweight. He traditionally fights at lightweight, which is somewhere Rodriguez has fought as well. He hasn't fought in almost 2 years. August 2018, the last time he stepped in the cage. But he does have 6 wins in a row. He went 2-1 in Bellator with his loss to Jalen Turner. So that's pretty solid. Now looking for Rodriguez, as I said, he's fought at lightweight before. He should be the taller man by 2 to 3 inches. So he should have and he should, generally speaking, he looks like the larger man overall. When you look at his record, the guy has power, 6 wins by knockout, but also 4 wins by submission, so certainly not inept on the mat. He hurt Tim Means multiple times who were tapping him out, so he really showed the depth or the breadth of his capabilities in that fight, which is a good performance overall. Worth noting that 7 of his 10 finishes are in rounds 2 or 3, so he's that type of guy that piles up damage and doesn't rush things. He's not going to rush in and try and get you out in the first 5 minutes. He's going to do the work he needs to put you in a position where he can finish you with maybe not exposing himself quite as openly as other more aggressive, less battle-tested fighters might. Now, he fought and won a decision on the Contender Series. But then, it wasn't a performance that was solid, but it wasn't overwhelming, and he had to go out and get another regional scene victory before he got the call on late notice to go to the UFC. Now, when he fought Tim Means, he struggled early with the pressure. He was getting backed up at times, and on the defensive, Means is a very capable, long-rangey welterweight, so it's not surprising to say that he's a veteran fighter, but he hurt him, and he kept, attacking, and eventually got him out of there later in round 2. Now, you look at Green's also a finisher. He's never gone the distance in his entire pro career. 3 wins by knockout, 6 wins by submission. His 2 pro defeats have also come by knockout. 7 of his 11 fights in general have ended inside the first 5 minutes. On the feet, he tends to be a bit of an aggressive striker. He wants to move forward and attack and pressure. His takedown D is a major concern, which, considering the majority of his wins have come by submission, it's not surprising. In regional fights, I've seen he's been taken on multiple occasions and early in matchups. He will attack off his back. He's a decent scrambler. He'll attack legs, look to sweep, stays very active. He can catch submissions off his back as well. So it's not a position you can sleep on him in if he gets you in that spot. Rodriguez, he's got submission skills of his own. As I said, he's not a poor grappler, a guy who's simply vulnerable and a scrapper on the feet. I think he should be able to avoid what Green's going to throw at him, and possibly even capitalize on Green's willingness to go to his back and use Rodriguez, use his size, use the fact that he's at a full camp to kind of grind on him and wear him out. Rodriguez hits hard, as we saw in the Means fight, and with the late notice for Green moving up a weight class, it's not ideal, especially for a guy who's got not limited experience, but he's not known for going deep into matchups, a lot of first round finishes. And then you consider, on top of all that his 2 losses have come by knockout. I think this is ample opportunity for Rodriguez to get the victory here. I think D-Rod gets him out of there, and my prediction is Daniel Rodriguez to defeat Gabriel Green by knockout. In the co-main event of the evening, we have a very fun heavyweight matchup as the 18-3 Blagoy Ivanov takes on the 14-1-1 Augusto Sakai. Currently, the odds are set at even. Both guys are turning at -110, so it's a pick'em fight as far as the bets are concerned. I'm not too sure how this will play out as the week goes. We'll have to wait and see. Now, Ivanov is a former WSOF champion. He had won 5 in a row coming to the UFC, lost his debut to Junior Dos Santos, heavyweight main event debut. Big spot for him. Also known for, obviously, his Sambo, in which he defeated Fedor, so that obviously got him. Of course, his life story also being fairly significant. Won back-to-back fights versus Ben Rothwell and Taito Ivasa before a split decision loss to Derek Lewis. Now for Sakai, 5 straight victories as well, undefeated in the UFC, 3-0, stopped Chase Sherman and Marcin Tybura. Won a close, very controversial split decision against Andrei Arlovsky, at least a split decision that was contestable against him. For Blagoy, he's only 5'11", which is small for a heavyweight. He'll be 4 inches shorter than his opponent. There'll be a 4-inch reach advantage for Augusto as well, and Sakai should be 10 to 15 pounds heavier, along with being the younger man by 5 years. So a lot of physical advantages for Augusto in this fight. Now, Blagoy has gone to his grappling background in recent matchups. 5 takedowns over his last 2 bouts, and that's interesting to note because, he's kind of was one of those guys who kind of relied on his striking and used his grappling more to be defensive. But for Sakai, 88% takedown defense. So he's not this type of individual who you can just walk up to and put on the mat and he's going to stay there, more like a Taito Ivasa type. Sakai much better defensively, or at least getting to the ground. That's very difficult. Now, Blagoy had some issues with the physicality of Derek Lewis. A lot of close-range fighting in that matchup. A lot of chest-to-chest pushing and shoving and moving around with big bodies. Which can be difficult. He got pushed around the cage at times. It seemed to slow him down. But again, he came back in spurts and made that fight very close. He nearly won it. But again, he was slowing down, still firing, but just tired and wearing the damage, which again possibly influenced the judges against him. For Sakai, the guy's got power. 11 of his 14 wins have come by knockout. Also, he's 3-1-1 in decisions. He's 1-1 in splits. So it tells you that it's difficult he doesn't have an amazing record in decisions, but it's not terrible. But it's worth noting 10 of his last 12 fights have gone into round 2 or longer, including 7 of those in round 3. So he's not a one and done heavyweight. He's not a guy who's going to come out, blow his wad in the first round and be absolutely useless. He can go into rounds 2 and 3 and be effective, and that should be a big factor in this fight. When he fought Andrei Arlovski, he was really stalking him for the most of the matchup, not throwing a ton of volume, but keeping the pressure on him. When you go back to his debut against Chase Sherman, which didn't even go the distance, a third-round stoppage, he landed 100-plus strikes. So anytime a heavyweight can do that, that's very noteworthy. Far less offense against Arlovski, but was pushing forward, leading a lot of the exchanges, and that helped him with the judges ultimately in the decision. In that fight against Andre, who's shown, if you're a young guy coming up, Andre's a good test, and he's going to beat you if you're not on your game, and we saw Sakai do enough to win that one. He still looked solid in round 3. He was, pushing him around, advancing, moving forward. Again, that could be very big in a fight here against a fighter that tends to wear that damage and look a little slower in the third round if this fight does go that deep. I do like what I've seen of Sakai in the clinch. I know Blagoy is a very talented grappler, but Sakai, he'll work some knees, he'll work some short strikes. Again, I think clinch fighting will be a key aspect of this matchup. When he stopped Marcin Tybura, he got him along the cage, controlled him, and came over the top with a sequence of powerful right over the top. I don't want to call them hooks, but just overhand rights almost from the clinch, and took him out very impressively. At range, he'll put together some nice combinations. He mixes up his punches as well. He's got a really nice front kick down the middle. He'll go to the body or the chin with, and he'll use it almost like a jab, where he'll just flash it out. Where it's like you have to be mindful constantly. This big appendage can come flying down the middle and do some serious damage if you're not careful and you let it you let your mind slip about that coming down, attacking you. Now for Blagoy, his volume and willingness to let his opponent push him around is concerning. His willingness to kind of back up and try and jab and allow his opponent to move forward is not certainly something I like to see out of a heavyweight. He tends to slow down a little bit in demanding fights, which we've already discussed. Again, that does not weigh well with the judges. My apologies. I think Blagoy needs to use a takedown-heavy offense again, which could be draining, taking on a bigger, younger man with good takedown defense in his own right. If he can't do that, I think he's going to need a knockout here. This could be if Sakai doesn't let his hands go, this could be a much closer fight than it needs to be. The odds, of course, indicate they're expecting to be a close fight, but I think there's a lot favoring Augusto in this fight. I like Sakai's activity. I like how varied he is. I like the fact he should have the power advantage, and he carries his offense deep into matchups, which is very crucial. Both, again, his variety and his power. He could very well win a decision here. He could knock out Blagoy inside the first round, or he could stop him later in the matchup due to exhaustion and just wearing him down. Nonetheless, my prediction is Augusto Sakai to defeat Blagoy Ivanov by knockout. Finally, we move to the main event of the evening. Before I get into it, I should say, put at least a viewer discretion on this, as I have not been able to pick my way out of a main event in the last little while. I have actually got 4 consecutive main events wrong and 5 of my last 6. In fact, of the last, 11 matchups, I only got 3 main events correct. That is not ideal. Now, that being said, I did have a stretch where, let's see, I won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of 9 prior to that. So, hey, we have our ups, we have our downs. That's why this business is fun and exciting and frustrating all at the same time. Nonetheless, we're in the UFC's middleweight division as former champion 19-4-1 Tyron, the Chosen One Woodley, takes on the 18-3 El Dorino Gilbert Burns. The betting odds currently favor Woodley as the favorite at -163. The return on Burns is a solid +137. Now Woodley, as I said, is coming off a loss to Kamaru Usman, which cost him the title. His first loss since UFC 174, in which he was defeated by Rory McDonald back in 2014. He had gone 6-0-1, including 3 title defenses and a draw mixed in as well. So 4 times he walked to the cage with his belt around his waist and left with his belt around his waist. Nothing to be ashamed of there. Now you look at Burns. He has won 5 in a row, 7 of 8. He's 3-0 since coming back up to welterweight, including a victory over Gunnar Nelson and finishing Damian Maia, which is incredibly impressive, something Woodley could not do. Physically, Burns 1 inch taller. Woodley will have a 3-inch reach advantage. Burns is the younger fighter by 4 years. Now, Woodley's coming off a title fight defeat, a nearly 15-month layoff, fight cancellations and changes, plus the COVID situation. There's big questions here for Woodley. Can he get motivated? What does he have left to prove? He's talked about the Covington fight. He's talked about wanting to get his belt back. There's been all kinds of back and forth in a lot of his matchups. He feels he's one of the greatest of all time. There's lots of pressure to perform here. Get back on track. Again, can he find that motivation that gets him back into the win column? For Gilbert Burns, the guy has lots of momentum. He is hungry to prove himself to be the prospect everyone anticipated that he was coming into the UFC. He has that massive victory over Damian Maia, the first guy to finish him, I believe, since Nate Marquardt. He is certainly in title contention. If he wins this fight here, he is absolutely in line for a shot at the title as far as I'm concerned. And it's also worth noting he has 4 victories since the last time Tyron Woodley stepped foot in the cage. So that tells you Burns is in a very good place right now. It's also worth noting, 2 of Burns' last 3 fights came on very short notice. That should help him to deal with the pressure and the uncertainty of this scenario here. At least he's used to coming in with, unideal circumstances and perform, well. Now, what makes Tyron Woodley good and what ultimately helped him rise to the title, to hold the title and become one of the best welterweights of all time? The guy's got big power in his hands, knocking out Robbie Lawler, hurting Stephen Wonderboy Thompson on multiple occasions. The guy knows how to put fists to chins and put you down. Overall, his speed and ability to close distance and his wrestling are also major factors here. He's much faster than you anticipate. He'll kind of go slow and then picks up the speed. And whether he's closing the distance to land power or wrestle, huge weapons he has in his favor as well. And again, his ability to wrestle, and if he gets you on the ground, he's got a good submission game. He actually started off his career as a submission fighter. And he adapted and improved, and he's added a lot of weapons to his arsenal, but that's something he went back to against Darren Till. But when you look at his arsenal his resume of victories, he's used a variety of different tools to get there. He beat Damian Maia with good counter wrestling, avoiding takedowns, and being the better striker. He beat Darren Till with superior wrestling and grappling. He beat Thompson with power and the threat of the takedown, where he was able to, if Thompson moved forward too willingly to engage, Tyron put him on the mat with takedowns, or he'd throw big power and hurt him that way. So lots of tools in his tool bag. He does a great job of exploiting his opponent's weaknesses or maximizing his advantages, and that was the problem, and that's why I picked Usman in that matchup, is Usman didn't present any of those big, glaring gaps that Woodley, if he was going to find a way to win that fight by exploiting a weakness, it was going to have to be something that not a lot of us were aware of. He's going to have to show us something that we didn't see out there, and he wasn't able to, and he got beat fairly soundly. He couldn't out-wrestle him or out-grapple him. He didn't have the superior striking, and his cardio, which has always been something I've keyed on a lot of his fights, caught up to him, and he just wasn't there later in that matchup. Now, how does he exploit Gilbert Burns? That's a big question. Where does his path to victory lie? Burns is an exceptionally talented grappler. We have seen him at times taken down in the odd fight, where guys have had success taking him down and grinding out victories. Not so much in this division. Maia had some success early on, but again, Maia's on another level as far as grappling is concerned. I don't think Woodley's going to be able to take him down. And even if he does take him down early in the rounds 1 or 2, Burns is so good defensively and offensively that Woodley's going to have to work very hard to find any positives out of those scenarios, and that could hurt him in a longer fight if he can't get the finish. I'm not sure if Woodley's going to be able to strike him over 5 rounds, or even 3 for that matter, and get enough in the books to win the decision. Burns' striking has vastly improved. He has power, as we saw. And again, his ability to just function on the ground and be so good on the mat makes his willingness to push forward and engage that much better. Woodley's cardio is an issue as well. If he can't dictate the pace of the fight, he will slow down. So if Gilbert's able to use that confidence in his grappling to engage on the feet more aggressively than he normally would, that is going to be a problem for Woodley. Now, Woodley has better boxing than I give him credit for, than a lot of people give him credit for. But he doesn't do well with pressure. He puts his back on the cage a lot. He's looking for openings to fire back, but obviously if they don't come, he's not nearly as active. And as he gets tired, he's less active still. And I think his big path to victory here is a knockout. I think he's going to have to catch Gilbert Burns moving forward, blast him, and get him out of there. And in that scenario, I don't really like a fighter's chances of winning if you have to knock a guy out and that's your only avenue to victory. Woodley is in a post-title fight letdown scenario. He's coming off a longer layoff. He has struggled versus talented, aggressive grapplers with striking power, and that's exactly what Burns represents. I think Burns is going to press Woodley. He's going to land some big strikes of his own. He's going to keep the pressure on him, very similar to Usman. Maybe tie up and clinch with him if he needs to. Create some scrambles, make him work hard. Again, Gilbert Burns needs to absolutely be mindful of the power coming back in his direction that could finish the fight at any point in time. But I see that window closing as we get into the second half of round 2, round 3, and round 4. I see Woodley starting to slow down and not being able to deploy that nearly as effectively, and starts to second guess himself a little bit, and he's just not nearly as effective. that threat dissipates, I think Burns can keep pushing. Burns has not, his cardio isn't amazing, but he has slowed down at times in fights, but I think he's a more diverse fighter. He's in a much better spot as far as his career and his mindset are concerned. This is a huge fight for him. This is a championship fight for him. But for Woodley, this is a matchup where he's trying to hold on to his legacy and maintain some semblance of relevance as far as the top is concerned. I think Burns comes out, puts together a career performance, and my prediction is Gilbert Burns to defeat Tyron Woodley I think Burns takes him out by TKO. I think you'll be shocked to see Burns finish him. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC on ESPN 9. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. My bet packs, if you want to venture down that road, will also be for sale. I most likely, considering how shitty my last performance was, will offer some type of deal where you can buy this one, and if I don't do well, I'll give you the second one for free. We'll see how that comes to pass. Either way, I always appreciate hearing from everyone. If you want to send me a message on Twitter, KO_predictions, Facebook, email, through my website, any number of ways to get in touch with me. I always like hearing from people and seeing what you have to say, and I just appreciate the fact you take time to tune in and watch my show anyway. There's a lot of good predictors and presenters out there as far as MMA and mixed martial arts are concerned. But once again, thank you very much for tuning in, guys, and we'll talk to you in the not-too-distant future. Take care.